Okay, yeah, Jim from Cleveland, welcome. Some of what people are hoping to get out of it are keeping their own bias at bay, being know what to be on the watch for so they can be a better coach, wanting to refine their skills, more insight on how to work with people unlike me, raise awareness from Amy from Cleveland. Terrific, thank you. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. I appreciate everyone being here today and for your interest. And Milton is interested in determining how the information shared in the session aligns with cultural competency in coaching. Oh, terrific, terrific, great. We are so glad you're here. So a formal welcome to everyone. Welcome to the 2020 through 2022 Virtual Midwest Regional Coaches Conference. This is our pivot from in-person conference in Milwaukee to virtual, stretching from today. This is our kickoff webinar through February of 2022. We'll have a webinar every first Wednesday of the month from noon to 1 Central, as well as some months we have 2 webinars. So we are so glad you're with us and look forward to having you join us throughout the series. The recordings will be available for each presentation. So if you're not able to attend live, you may reach out to Meredith, our conference virtual assistant, at mlpwilliams@gmail.com, and she can hook you up with the recording. And you also are eligible for 1 core competence continuing education credit for attending today. So just also, I'd like to briefly announce and introduce you to the team who is bringing you the virtual conference today. It's myself, I'm Katie Drescher from ICF Wisconsin, and I'm working on the team with Jim Smith from Cleveland, Nicole Paluto, also from ICF Wisconsin, and Gary Schleifer, who many of you know from Choice Magazine. One of us will be moderating each session, and Meredith Williams, our VA, who I mentioned, will be the technology room monitor for every session. We are seeking a social media manager. If anyone is interested in taking that role, please reach out. Or if you know of anyone that might be interested to help us to promote the event and let everyone know when and where it's happening, that would be wonderful. We also are planning a 2022 in-person conference in September of 2022 that would be held in Milwaukee. So mark your calendars for that one. So 2 years down the road, we can connect in person. And also the community service project that was going to happen when we met in person is continuing to seek coaches for pro bono coaching for nonprofit leaders. You can contact Meredith if you're interested. If you're an ACC coach and can commit to 6 hours of pro bono coaching, we'd love to have you participate in that community service project. And also, my last announcement before I introduce our speaker this morning is that we'd like to thank our sponsors, University of Wisconsin-Madison, Choice Magazine, Milwaukee Video, and Stewart Leadership. Thank you all so much for supporting us and making our virtual series possible. We are so grateful. And now over to the main event. Today we are so pleased and excited to have LaTonya Wilkins with us. LaTonya is a global culture leader. She's a credentialed coach and speaker. LaTonya helps people, organizations, and entrepreneurs thrive and better connect with their employees. LaTonya has worked with Fortune 500 companies, higher education entities, technology executive leadership teams. Her career has been shaped by the roles she has held with highly admired companies in management roles. She has built leadership development programs from the ground up. LaTonya's coaching clients include underrepresented groups, flourishing entrepreneurs, ambitious leaders, and purpose-driven professionals. LaTonya leads and helps people connect across differences, that entrepreneurs feel empowered to thrive. Her vision empowers her to speak out on empowerment topics. We're so grateful for her to be with us today to help us learn how to coach people who are different than us. Thank you so much, and I'll turn it over to you, LaTonya.
Hey. Thank you so much, Katie, and hello to everybody. I'm LaTonya, and it's so amazing to see some familiar faces out there and to be in the room with so many coaches that want to make themselves better with coaching others that are different from us. We are not experts. So I want all of you to give yourself a little power pose, like a big power pose and an open pose, so you can be open to absorb anything from today. Okay. I know in these COVID times, we're always on the phone, we're always in Zoom meetings. Give me that power pose, get ready, because you're going to be on the edge of your seat this entire session. I'm a very motivational speaker, so this is going to be highly interactive. I want to hear from you. Please don't be afraid to speak out. So this is a little bit about me. As Katie said, I am a leadership and change coach. I do a lot of change team coaching these days. So I could talk a little bit more about that, especially around DEI. And I also do I facilitate a lot of workshops these days, of course, because that's where the market's at. The reason why I included this picture is because if you are a speaker, please type that in the chat if you missed the stage. I missed the stage. If you're a speaker and you missed the stage, type I missed the stage. It has been extremely different and challenging in a different way to be with you virtually, but I cannot wait to be back on the stage. I also want to give a shout out to this team for being able to pull this off, because they've been working on this for almost, 2 years? And I was so excited for this conference. And so now we'll make the most of it today. So are you ready? If you're ready, type I'm ready in the chat. So I'm going to start off with a story. So this picture was taken in the 1950s. And you'll see a bunch of women in this picture. What do you see? What are your impressions of this picture? Go ahead and type it in the chat. What else do you see? I see a bunch of women. What stands out to you? Go ahead, put it in the chat. What stands out to you in this picture? Smiles, we're still ready. We're still getting pumped up there, close together. What else, Amy? What else? Almost all white, almost, right? Multiple generations, suburban wives, generations. Okay, someone said almost all white. Okay, diverse ages. So only one person saw that there's only one Black woman in this picture, right? Only one person saw that. Okay, we got to see color. That's the first step, right? To be better at this, to be aware is seeing that color. Okay, that one Black person is my grandmother, my grandma Ruthie. Okay, my grandmother Ruthie was a school cafeteria worker for over 50 years. She migrated from the South, from Jackson, Mississippi, because my mother did not want to drink from a colored drinking fountain. She was afraid for her children. This was right after Emmett Till was killed and massacred in front of everybody, posters everywhere. My mother did not want to drink from a fountain. She was a child. And so my grandma first packed them up on a train, took them to Topeka, Kansas, and then they ended up in Des Moines, Iowa. These were her coworkers. I love this picture. You know why I love this picture? Because my grandma lived until 93 years old. So and I'm very lucky, I know that. I've had her well into my adulthood. She basically just transitioned in February. And some of these women's grandchildren were at her funeral. Let that sink in for a second. Grandchildren. These women were working together in the 1950s and 60s. What does that tell you that their grandchildren were at the funeral? These were real friendships. These were people that knew how to appreciate differences, thrive in differences, and also advocate for their friend of color. Okay, one of the granddaughters even told me that my grandma adopted her and helped her because her own mother died. Her mother that's in this picture. So one of the reasons why I'm sharing this with you is because my grandmother was always the light. She's been an inspiration to me. She's been the only one at work. She was the only one at work for a long time. And like I said, she's always been the light. She's been the light to others, and she's been the light across differences. So I want to say to you, and I want to challenge you all, to also be the light, okay? Be the light in this. I mean, the world right now is crazy. And I've suffered from a lot of tears. I've suffered a lot of different things right now, trauma, but try to be the light. And I'm gonna teach you some ways that you can be the light today. So Meredith, first poll. So like I said, I'm going to be extremely interactive. So if you came here and you wanted to put this on speaker and multitask, you're probably not in the right place today. So I want to know why you are here today. Meredith, go ahead and display that poll. I want to know about the people that are diversity fanatics. You go to everything that has to do with diversity inclusion. Someone, maybe you're currently working with diverse clients, so this is kind of just-in-time learning for you. While I'm not working currently with diverse clients, I might in the future. Maybe you're just curious. Some of you said you're just open or other. And if it's other, please put your answer in the chat box. So Meredith, go ahead and let those come on in. And when the poll's ready, we will display the results.
I'm going to give it just a couple more seconds here. See if we get any more entries. All right, I'm going to end the poll and display the results.
Great. So the biggest one, I'm currently working with diverse clients. Great. So I would love to hear more about that as we go through this. The second one, we have diversity fanatics. I love that. Please share some of your expertise as we're going through this. I don't know it all. I do base some of my work on science, so we'll talk a little bit about that. But I'd love to hear from you, especially those that we're talking about cultural competence, and maybe you can help us understand how this aligns. Some of you said you're just curious. Some of you said that you might not be working with diverse clients yet, but you may in the future. And then we have a bunch of others. If you are an other and you feel comfortable, please type your answer in the chat. We have someone here, University of Wisconsin, want to train. Oh, great. So you want to align this with your curriculum. Anybody else, please type that in the chat and keep that chat going. Keep sharing with each other throughout. So this is our agenda for today. And I'm going to talk to you about coaching, why coaching people different from us is important and what you should know about it. Mishaps that we all have, even that I have. The first coach I hired had a ton of mishaps with me. And that coach actually was the same race as me, but he still had a lot of mishaps, still had a lot of biases that manifested in our coaching. So that's what inspired me to develop this session and run it with coaches, because I want to change our profession. I want to elevate our profession so we're all better. And then I'm going to give you a 3-step process to coach people that are different from you and how to do that. So 3 considerations that you can take. These are some requests that I have for you, and these are always hard online, and I understand that. But the first thing I want you to do is to be honest and vulnerable. I really want you to be open, okay? I don't know it all. You don't know it all. I mean, a lot of people say that I am a diversity, equity, inclusion expert, but even I don't know it all. So I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to share some vulnerable things with you. I want you to participate with an open, non-defensive mind. And what I mean by that is if someone shares something in the chat that feels vulnerable, please don't correct them. Please don't judge them. That's not what we're here for. We're here to listen and learn from each other. Be open to learning something new. You might, like I said, you might have a deep expertise in this area. You might have done more than scratching the surface. So, but be open to learning something new. So, why is coaching people that are different from you important? Well, because when I first started coaching and I started my coach training, these were some of the things that I heard. And when I heard some of these things, I thought, wow, this is really, these people have a lot of biases, right? And we're living in a bubble, and we're thinking that we are exempt from some of the other issues that other people face when they are interacting with others that are different from them. So the first one I hear quite a bit is, I'm a coach. Asking powerful questions protects me from bias. So how many people have heard that? Type yes in the chat if you have. So there's there's this overall notion that just because we're good listeners as coaches, that we don't have implicit bias, or that we're not racist, or and that's not true. I'm sorry, it's just not. There are a lot of ways that this can manifest itself when you think you are exempt. We'll talk a little bit about that, but that does not protect you from bias, okay? Another thing that I hear a lot of coaches say, and that's why I fastly and fiercely mentioned it in the beginning, is color blindness. Oh, I don't see color, I'm good, I value all my clients. No, that's not, you have to see color. You have to see the difference in order to explore the difference, right? If you don't see the difference, can't explore the difference. Well, I've also heard coaches say, well, I only coach Christians, for example. I heard someone say this to me, really, in real life. So this isn't really that important to me. So I was running a session about LGBTQ folks and diversity, and someone actually said that. I coach Christians. I won't be coaching anyone that's different from me. Well, wrong. Again, if we are committed and we are ICF coaches, and if you look at the ICF values, diversity and inclusion is part of that. I see they've added some new things. So we want to be aligned with that. So yes, you do need to know. A client is a client. I see everyone the same. Again, that goes back to color blindness. That does not help you. You have, in order to explore the difference, you have to see the difference. And I'm going to say that a lot because this is a very, very, very common misperception. So just like my grandma, there's other things here where how many of you watch sports teams or any other types of teams, right? And you see that they're so gelled, right? They're these high performing teams, and they're very, very diverse. The U.S. women's soccer team, right? You saw all these powerful women, all diverse, all from different areas of the world. They all had, they grew up in different socioeconomic backgrounds, racial backgrounds, and they make it work, right? They see the differences, right? They see the differences in each person. So I want to challenge us to do the same. And we can do better. And this is why I use this example, because it's easy for us to do better. I mean, it's already being done. So I want to start getting into some of the science behind this. But before we do that, I'm going to segue into some additional questions. So Meredith, we have 2 in a row here. So I want to learn a little bit more about you. The first question I have for you is, how many of you think that you are more inclusive than the average person? So yes or no? And the next topic I'm going to talk about directly relates to this question. So we'll first have you answer this one. And Meredith, how are we doing on the responses?
We're doing great. I'm going to go ahead and end it and share the results.
Okay. So yes, 76%. And I have something that's going to help explain why we overwhelmingly think we are more inclusive than the average person. Okay. And a lot of that is the human fallacy. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Okay. The second question, Meredith, this is a follow-up going into the second. What % of the people in your closest circle are of a different race, culture, age, or sexual orientation? And I mean people, not your children's friends, okay? Do not count them. I want people that you are on a texting basis with, okay? Not someone that is on your team and you know them and you talk to them and you go to lunch with them sometimes. This is your closest circle. These are your go-to people.
I'm going to give it a few more seconds. It seems to be a little slower answers coming in. People have to do the math in their head. All right, I'll publish the results.
Okay, so 20% or less is tied with 20 to 40%. So the vast majority of you have very few people in your closest circle, which is, there's a lot of explanations for this. Do not be offended or discouraged. This is how this happens. There's actually a social psychological concept called homophily. It talks about how our networks are homogenous because those are the people that we're most attracted to. Some of you, that 40 to 50% and the 50% or more, bravo. That's something that you want to continue building on, because there was a study that was done recently, and the study actually featured students at colleges and universities, and they found that if students had a roommate of a different race in college, they were less likely to be prejudiced later in life. Okay, they were less likely to be prejudiced, and they had more favorable views towards people that were different from them. So exposure is definitely one way. It's not the only way, but it's definitely one piece of the equation. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. So there was recently an article, and this one was in the Washington Post, and this explains why a lot of you said that you don't have anybody or very few people in your closest circle that are of a different race or culture. So if you see this, one thing I want you to pay attention to here on this graphic is that Black people are more likely to have exposure across different cultures than white people. Why is that? Well, because we're minorities. And so you'll see that the average Black person has more friends of a different race on average than the average white person. Okay. One other thing I want to tell you about in the study that was found that's important is that the average white American only has basically one friend of each race in this country. Okay. And that's, I'm not saying those are close friends, but there's just friends, and these are people that self-reported friends. So they define this themselves. The other thing that one point I want to make about this, because I'm talking about exposure, and some of you are probably thinking, well, if I'm exposed and I have friends of different races, that makes me a better person. Well, not necessarily. So the article also found that for white friends that may have one or two Black friends, the Black friends reported more often than not that the white friend isn't openly curious about racism and the issues that they face in the world around racism. Okay, a lot of the white friends that they had were complicit in it, and they would try to gloss over anything that created any adversity towards their Black friends. Okay, I apologize. This study was only done with Black and white. I'm sure there's other intersectionalities and other races and cultures that this might be true in. But so what the big takeaway from this is that not only do we have fewer friends of different races than we think, and that's normal. And so I'm going to challenge you to kind of push the needle in that area. But if you are a friend of someone of a different race, or then you might not be curious about their needs. Okay. So one question or one challenge I have for you is I want you to all be more empathetic. Okay. If you do have a friend of a different race, I want you to be more empathetic and more curious and less judgmental. I want you to live their experience with them. Okay. One example that I have, the way that you can live that experience is I was once at a restaurant in a small town. I was driving through a small town with some friends. I'm from Iowa, and we had stopped on the road, and the waitress basically made some comments towards me that my friends were shocked about. Okay, and they also felt that we didn't get served as quickly, and the group I was with was white. Okay, so instead of them kind of glossing over it, they got curious about it. Okay, there's another situation where I experienced racism in front of white people, and that were my friends, quote unquote. And what happened is that we were entering a case competition. Okay, and we were all at a hotel, suited up, and I walked away to get a glass of water to prepare, and a white woman stopped me and she said, "Hey, can you put my glass away?" And a couple people saw that. A couple people on my team And they did not get curious about that, okay? Can you imagine how I was feeling when I got up there, when I realized I couldn't really trust my team? And so I want to challenge all of you, even if you haven't had these opportunities to not just to speak out, but just to understand and acknowledge the different types of experiences that people of color may face, okay? And this is not just people in the world, it's also your clients, okay? Getting curious about that instead of saying, well, that didn't really happen. And that's what one of my classmates said at the case competition was, I don't even know what to say about that. Well, you could say something. You could be a little bit more empathetic, okay? So try that. And again, as coaches, that's what we try to do, okay? Why do we often underestimate how inclusive we are? Well, there's a study that explains this, and it provides more input. This study was done by the Center for Talent Innovation. This entire slide is about being an ally, okay? We talk a lot about being an ally. There's been a lot of articles written about it. There's been a lot of posts about it, and there's been a lot of interest in this, especially in our times of living in trying to be an anti-racist society, right? And so the study basically surveyed men and women from the workplace, and they found a big disparity. You'll see here on the left-hand side between people that think they're an ally or consider themselves an ally. So just like all of you that consider themselves more inclusive than the average person, 83% of women and 70% of men said that they were an ally or they considered themselves an ally. But then the study asked further questions, kind of probing on this, and they found that of those 83% of women that thought they were an active ally or identified as an active ally, only 19% of them were allies, truly allies. And those were people that were sticking their neck out. And that's here on the right-hand side. I'll talk a little bit more about that. The also stark contrast is with men. So you'll see that's an even bigger disparity. 70% of the men surveyed consider themselves to be an ally, but only 8% were found to be an active ally. And again, they were able to determine these through the questions that they asked. So I want you to type in the chat, how many of you consider yourselves an ally? I'm going to talk a little bit about the different levels of allyship. If you do consider yourself an ally, type yes. And if you consider yourself an ally, I want maybe even share something that you've done to demonstrate you being an ally or your allyship. So over here, I actually have an ally curve because since we're in this time where we're all trying to be anti-racist or all striving to be anti-racist, I found that there's different levels of allyship, and I really want to call that out because this HBR study is real. Again, and even you answered that. Many of you said that you were more inclusive than the average person, but are you? I can't really test you. I can't really probe on that. So the 3 levels of allyship that I have and I talk about in my talks are, first, it starts off as an associate. Okay, so an associate is someone that you can vent to. Okay, you can vent to them. They're gonna say, oh my gosh, that's messed up. Gosh, that sucks. And you vent to them, and they might vent to you. Okay, we all need associates. We all have them, but they're not really sticking their neck out for you. Okay, all they're doing is talking about you, validating, or talking with you, validating your pain and your adversity, and that's about it. Then you have friends and supporters. Okay, most of you that answered yes, that you are more inclusive than the average person, are probably friends and supporters. What do friends and supporters do? Well, they might go protest with you, right? They might go to a protest, Black Lives Matter protest with me. Great, you're a friend, supporter. They might, read a little bit about anti-racism. Okay, they might be the person that is gonna, basically cheer you on when you go and you speak truth to power. Okay, that's what a friend supporter is. Lots of friends and supporters, and that's great. Real allies, what do? Well, they're champions, and they stick their neck out. They take risks for you. They're not just a sounding board. They're not just a friend. They're not just going to make a sign, but they're in this for life. And what's a real ally? Well, like I said, there's someone that really sticks their neck out. So instead of them going to that protest with you, they're actually going to work to lead their white friends to be more anti-racist, right? Or to be better allies, or they're gonna speak truth to power, and they're not gonna be afraid to do it. For example, there could be, like, I was in a meeting once, and a black woman was being talked over, and that ally spoke up in the meeting. She said, wait, we need to hear everybody, so let's stop. The reason why this is important is because when you are starting to speak up for the marginalized, or when you start coaching marginalized folks, you'll see that there's this trauma going on right now, right? We're all experiencing trauma, and we're exhausted. So sometimes we need those allies to speak up for us, to continue moving things forward for us. Okay, we can't always be the voice in the room. We can't always be the strong voice in the room. So I want you to look at the 3 levels of allyship here on the right. And in the chat, I want you to type what you are striving for over the next year, okay? In that chat. I also want you to take out a pen, and I want you to write down one action that you will take to get there over the next year, okay? If you want to go from friend/supporter to ally/champion, I want you to write down one bold action that you will take over the next year to do that. Okay, I'm going to give everybody a chance to do that. And I'm going to look at the chat here. I've been talking a lot, so I want to stop for a minute before we get into the solutions here. So it looks like a lot of us want to be an ally champion. Katie, any other comments that you've seen that have popped out to you that you'd like me that I should address before we move on to the second half of this presentation?
There's a few where people have shared their experiences of how they have served as an ally in their coaching community or in their community, and the also earlier on, Charity Gent from the University of Wisconsin just wanted to know what a more of a definition of inclusive.
Okay.
Back from that very first question, but lots of very rich, robust participation in the chat.
Yeah, so we'll hold off on the example of inclusive because I'm going to talk a little bit about unconscious bias here in a minute.
Okay.
Mary, I hope you don't mind. Thank you so much, Katie. And so I'm gonna actually read some of these stories aloud. Mary, I love this. So after George Floyd, Mary reached out to my Black clients, took their input regarding what my company should be doing, encouraged them to share their thoughts with management. I shared their ideas with management as well. That is excellent, excellent. So what I'm seeing here is that you already had a relationship with a lot of these folks, and so you weren't reaching out to them out of the blue. Okay, you reached out, you listened, you were curious, you didn't correct or judge. That is amazing. Mary, I also want to share with you. So one of my friends who's also a coach reached out to me and asked me what she should be doing. And I said, reach out to your Black friends. And she's like, really? I don't know if I should do that. I said, if they are friends, you should reach out to them. She reached out to them. Guess what? Every single one of them said, you are the first person that reached out to me. Thank you so much. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for understanding what's going on in my life. So do it. If you have the relationship, do it. Don't do it if it's something, again, if it's completely out of the blue, that's going to do more harm than good. Okay, look at all these allies we're breeding up. We're going to keep talking about that. And Mary, thank you. Yes, it's very hard. It was very hard to do it. Okay, and yes, it is. It's because it's vulnerable for you too, and you don't know what's going to happen, right? So thank you for taking that risk. And those are the kinds of things we need to do as allies if we really want to change the world, and if we really want to change the coaching profession, which is what we're all here to do, right? Okay. So I want to hear from you. Yes, no. Have you coached someone that was of a different race, gender, or sexual orientation in the last year? Yes or no? I think I'm missing a word on the slide. Sorry about that. Hopefully you didn't get too jumbled up there. So let's see how many yeses and nos we have. Yes, lots of folks. Good, great, good. Because this is important, and I want everyone to have this competency, because guess what? There's not very many coaches of color out there. So we got to be good at it. We got to get better, right? We got to learn from each other. And we got to be willing to stick our necks out there. We got to be willing to be vulnerable and make mistakes, okay? We're going to make mistakes. Great, Murray, it sounds like most of your clientele historically, many, great. So we're all here on the same page. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about some of the flawed solutioning that we've done around this topic. But one of the flawed approaches that we have with this process is that you know, our clients often pick us, right? And the selection process can be filled with bias and questioning on both sides. So you know, it's important because sometimes when our clients pick us, they pick us because of our expertise, but they kind of assume that we're pretty inclusive, right? That we're pretty equitable, but that's not always the case. And I'm going to give you an example. So let's call this woman here on this slide Tamisha, okay? And Tamisha is an actual client. She was someone that came to be coached by me after the coach that her company chose for her didn't work for her, okay? This was an executive that was the only one on her team, and she chose me after she had been paired with someone that wasn't a great fit. So I want to tell you why this relationship didn't really fit for Tamisha. Okay, so if you are a white coach coaching a black client or any other race, I would probably, and I don't want to say we're a monolith. Okay, I don't speak for all black people by any means, but I will tell you that if there are someone of a marginalized population, for example, even LGBTQ, if someone is LGBTQ and you're coaching them, and you're not, there's a lot going through their head, okay? Especially if you don't have evidence on your website that you've worked with different kinds of groups before. So what's really going through their minds? And this is so important for you all to realize. So you're going into that first meeting, what is that client that's different from you really thinking? Will this person understand me? Will they understand me? Will they strive to understand me? Or will they judge me? Okay, they're going to have a different journey than you have. All right, there's a lot of coaches that still project, and they say, well, because this was my path, this will be your path. So we really strive to truly understand me. Is this the right coach? You know, I don't know. I don't know if we have enough in common. I don't know if I can trust them. I don't know if we walk this similar enough path. But this is going through someone's head. So when you're scheduling that discovery session and you're trying to bond with your client in that first session and design your alliance, these are the things that are going through their head. It's not about the task that you want to achieve. And you might want to stop and explore that. I wish I could do a demo right now. I know we don't have time, but you want to stop and explore that during your discovery session. Okay, be open to that. One of the questions I like to ask is, you know, what concerns do you have with working with me as a coach? I ask that in every single session when I'm working with someone different from me. Okay, I work with a lot of folks that are different from me. Again, I'm a minority in the population, so I always ask, especially male executives, this question. And it's funny because usually at the beginning of the relationship, they always say, well, I don't know if this is a fit. And then by the end, they see that it is a fit. But again, that's the bias that's coming out. And you want them to ask, and you want to name that, and you want to be able to get it out there because you build that trust. I don't take offense to it when people say that to me. I listen to it and I validate it. And we have to do the same thing with our clients that are different from us. The third thing is, has this person coached someone like me before? And this is a delicate balance, but you do want your clients to know if you've coached different kinds of people. I mean, if you look at my LinkedIn page, you'll see I call out the populations that I coach. I know it's awkward, so there's probably some tactful ways to do this, but think about some tactful ways for you to demonstrate that you have coached people like your client that's different from you before. Can I trust this person? Again, if people, a lot of people are asked to be coached, or a lot of companies hire coaches because, you know, that client might have a little bit of trauma or baggage that they're bringing to the coach relationship. All right, they're coming to you with this heavy backpack, and you're trying to lighten their load a little bit. And so, but they're thinking they're bringing that baggage, and that's weighing down their trust for you. So just be mindful that this is really happening with the client. Again, we're not a monolith. I can't speak for everybody, but I want to hear from you. And I want you to vulnerably answer this question. When you're coaching someone different from you, what's going through your mind? I mean, this is what's going through Tamisha's mind. What goes through your mind when you're trying to bring in someone that's different from you? I know for me, I want to know people's concerns about working with me. And I want to know that's okay if they have concerns about working with me. So what's going through your mind? What are some of the things that you bring up? How can I make this space feel safe? Yes, we're going to talk a little bit about psychological safety. Yes, that's a really good one. Anybody else? What else is going through your mind? Yeah, I love that. What are the experiences I may not understand? Yes. Just because you have experience doesn't mean you have experience with everybody, right? You know, especially intersectionality, right? That's a term I want to talk a little bit about, but intersectionality is when you're a member of two or more identities. So for example, Black women are intersectional, right? They're two identities, two marginalized groups. And so you saying that, hey, I might not understand this is exactly how you start. How can I hold space? Yes, yes, yes. And you're going to be uncomfortable holding that space. Yes, I love that, Charti. How do I stay present? And again, I think that's something that as a coach that I just ask the person and I just tell the person where I'm at. And that really helps build trust. I'm not going to scrutinize you for feeling, you know, weird about working with me, right? Or reluctant. Okay. So this is the last question. We'll get into the solutions. And if you could go, I think we've answered this one. Yeah, we have. Okay. So now I'm gonna shift to talking about the solutions. So when we are coaching people different from us, there's research that's actually been done on this. It's a phenomenon called social anxiety, and that's when we walk into a situation with people that are different from us, and we have this we're plagued with anxiety as we walk into that relationship or as we step into that relationship. And one of the first things that we tend to do, according to this research, is overcompensation, and that's trying too hard to make the person feel comfortable. So one of the studies that I'm referencing actually talked about you know, white people that were uncomfortable with people of different races, especially white women and Black women. And it said that if a white woman is uncomfortable with Black women at work, they will overcompensate by being overly nice because they don't want to be perceived as being prejudiced. Okay, that's a human reaction. I'm not scrutinizing you about it, but be aware of that. I've done that too, right? Where you might feel like you're walking on eggshells. So instead of really walking to your role as a coach or stepping into your role as a coach, you're too busy overcompensating, which comes off as contrived. So I mean, you want to make the person feel uncomfortable, but if you are overcompensating, make sure that you know that and that you're aware of it. Not allowing people to bring their entire self to the relationship, only focusing on things you have in common. This is a big one, especially, for example, if you're an executive coach, if you're only focusing on the executive pieces of this, there's a whole nother personal side to folks. One example I have is one of my clients, he was a male executive. You know, I could make a lot of stereotypes about him, but he was one of the most emotional clients I've ever had. And we ended up talking about a lot of things from his work to his marriage. So make sure that you're allowing that space, because that might connect to something else that they're struggling with at work. And then avoiding or glossing over uncomfortable topics. Again, that goes back to stereotyping. For example, when I talked about when you have a different kind of client or someone that's different from you, explore that discomfort. Don't just gloss over it, okay? Hey, I can see that you're nervous about working with me or you're reluctant. Let's explore that a little bit more. What is that? Okay, so keep exploring that. Don't gloss over it. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about implicit bias. I skipped a little fast. So how many of you have seen this classic problem? It's a problem that is classically used to test implicit bias. I want everybody to read it, and I want you to write down your answer in your head, or on your sheet of paper here. So go ahead and read it. Write down your answer. Please don't type it in the chat because I don't want people to cheat. It's a classic problem. If you've read Thinking Fast or Slow, that book is full of puzzles like this. And so a lot of people, the demonstration that I have here is many of you, even though you don't want to admit it, probably answered that the bat cost $1. But the answer is $1.05. The reason why we often say $1 is because our brain takes shortcuts that are often wrong, okay? And this is implicit bias. This is the essence of implicit bias. What happens is that our brain wants to simplify the world for us, but it's at the expense of others, okay? So this is a definition of implicit bias. Many of you have probably been through unconscious bias trainings. They're attitudes and stereotypes, favorable and unfavorable assessments. They're not always nefarious or unfavorable. Sometimes they're favorable. One might be that Asians are smarter than other people. That's a favorable one, right? Involuntary, no control, as you see with the problem. Dozens, and we talk about these a lot in diversity training. And I want to talk about the evolution of implicit bias. So we've heard a lot about this. A lot of you have probably been through it. And it started in 1998, and the world went crazy about it when Google adopted it. And so now all these companies think that implicit bias is the answer, but there's actually a meta-analysis that was done just a couple years ago that really shown some strong doubt on implicit bias training. It doesn't work. It didn't show any change in behaviors. What happens is that we have this temporary surge in productivity after the implicit bias session, but then after that, it backfires. So I'm not saying you should never do implicit bias training, but it should always be one step in the bigger process. Frankly, it doesn't work very well. And so what does work? It looks like before I answer what does work, we have some questions here. Okay, we're still answering the problem. Okay, great. So this is the three-pronged model I want to talk a little bit about. With coaching people that are different from you, there are three fundamentals that you can take with you. I want you to write all of these down. The first one is exposure. Talked a lot about it. Second one is neuroscience, oxytocin. Talk a little bit more about that. Talked about oxytocin. I talked about my grandmother and the belonging that she had with her group of colleagues. And the third is psychological safety, which we've already scratched the surface of in some of our chats. Okay, very simple concepts. Concepts, there's a lot of information out there on right now. So none of you have any excuses not to apply all three of these over the next 6 months or so. Okay? How does this metaphorically relate? Well, exposure is all the stuff in the world above the surface that we can see. We can all access that. So exposure is making your network more diverse, making you more open to diverse folks, and making your kids' worlds more diverse, okay? Getting that exposure, like I said, when I referenced the study that was done with college students, when they have roommates that are a different race, they are less prejudiced later. Oxytocin, that is a neuroscience that is basically a chemical in our brain that is released when we belong. What does that do? It helps us, enables us to create more authentic relationships with people. So remember what I talked about overcompensating? Oxytocin release, the release of oxytocin kind of helps hedge that, okay? Makes you a little bit more authentic, and it makes the other person feel a little bit more authentic as well. Because if you generate oxytocin for yourself, or you release it for yourself, the other person is going to be releasing for as well. Third one, psychological safety. I talk about this a lot. It's the backbone of my work. Amy Edmondson, she does a lot of research around this, HBR researcher. I'll talk a little bit about how to bring that into your coaching. Exposure. Talked a little bit about exposure. Some of you, when I did this presentation last time, people asked, how can I get more exposure? I had a lot of people that were living in remote areas, and it's very hard. This is a Midwest conference, so I'm assuming there's folks from smaller towns. How do I do this? Well, the good thing is now that the world is more virtual, you have access to more diverse networks. I've already seen this. There's an organization that I'm on the board of called the Leadership Forum Community, and we had to take our summit entirely online. And I would say our diversity doubled this year because we had people from all over the world. We had a lot of other people that we can reach, different ages. Instead of us going to Lake George in New York, we were able to have it online. So take advantage of that. Join a board, okay? Volunteer. Try to do other things to expose you to different cultures. Read. There's a ton of reading lists out there, anti-racism reading lists, but get some exposure. Try to learn about different people's experiences. Second one, oxytocin. This is what you're going to release in your coaching sessions. How do you do that? Well, you do it through unique connection. You do it through making someone feel like they belong, that they belong in the room, and that you two have a relationship that exhibits belonging. Okay, a lot of us, we can't touch, right? I mean, especially if your clients are of a different gender or even same gender, it might not be appropriate to touch, but laughing generates oxytocin as well, releases it for both people. Like I said, if you admit and you call out that discomfort within yourself and within others, that generates oxytocin as well. But you want to get there with your clients, okay? Because that's how you're going to build more of a bond with them. Third one, psychological safety. One of the things I want to say is that acknowledge is that psychological safety is a team concept. A lot of us erroneously think it's an individual concept, but you can bring it into your coaching relationships, right? And one of the ways to do that is that if your client takes a risk, that you don't penalize them for that, okay? You welcome them taking a risk. For example, one of my clients, like I said, he brought up some of the problems that he was having with his wife at home, okay? Instead of me judging that, I listened to it and I helped him tie that back to some of the things that might be happening at work, okay? He was having a lot of challenges at work. You might also want to take risk as a coach, and that will generate psychological safety. And like I said, taking risk as a coach might be, oh my gosh, I've never worked with someone like you before. I'm not really sure what to do. So please let me know. Please keep giving me feedback, and please let me know if this is working for you. Okay? Please let me know how I can be better. Please help me know how you receive that. How did you receive that? I feel like I just took a risk. Okay? So these are the kinds of things that you want to do to promote psychological safety in your relationships as a coach. I'm going to end with this, and then I'm going to try to leave some time for some questions that sometimes we dive into the end too quickly. I want to leave you with, just because we're coaches doesn't mean we know everything, okay? You want to be a human being first. You want to see the person fully, and you want to you want to create a psychological safe relationship with them, okay? So in order to do that, let's not dive into the deep end too quickly. Let's start with the shallow waters, right? Start the shallow waters, start going through, take those risks along the way, call those risks out, okay? Admit that you don't know everything. Laugh with your clients. Try not to take the world so seriously, okay? Try not to take them so seriously. Create some belonging within that relationship. So that's a recap. So I want everybody to write down the three-pronged model: exposure, oxytocin, psychological safety, and maybe one thing that you can do differently within each of these areas. And I'm going to have you work on that more after the session, because I want to wrap up and get to some questions. So Katie, if you could start monitoring those. Also, let's connect. Here's more information about me. I am actually writing a Beyond Training blog series. It's all about creating a diverse, equitable, and inclusive culture in these times, especially being all remote. So that's out there. You can get that on my website. Connect with me on LinkedIn, LaTonya Wilkins. I'm LaTonya_coaching on Instagram, and then Twitter. I don't check it as much, but I'm also there. I don't tweet as much, but I'm there as well. I have lots of resources for you. I want you to keep working on it. Let's definitely connect. I want to hear your stories. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for being on this journey with us. So I'm going to turn it over to Katie, and we will take a couple questions and wrap up.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, LaTonya. That was really, really wonderful. Really appreciate it. What's coming in through the chat is a lot of appreciation. Great session. Thank you. Thank you. I don't see any more questions right now. Great program, great session, learned something new. So a lot of acknowledgement and adoration, but no questions yet. Great job. And yeah, thank you so much. One question I have for you is what would be a good next step?
So the big one that I always say, even when I work with organizations, is doing some deep reflection and gaining some real awareness about yourself. For me, it was awareness around how I was reacting in situations with people that I was coaching that were different from me. Again, mine is white men, right? I get white male executives, and I'm thinking that I know who they are or what they are before I talk to them. And I wrote down how I respond to that, right? How I respond to that nervousness or even that imposter syndrome. So first getting some awareness around it, and think about also reflect on the ways that you're overcompensating. Okay. So that's the big one, is get honest with yourself. And you don't have to admit this to anybody yet. Just get honest with yourself. And don't talk about this in terms of political arenas. It's really about becoming better as a coach.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Some more comments. Great session. You're inspiring. Appreciate your energy. Very timely and important issue. You provoke my thought and action. So no additional questions are coming through. So here's one from Carol. How do you know when you really aren't a good fit versus when you are just feeling like you don't know enough?
That's a good question. I mean, I think that's definitely a dance that you usually don't figure out until a little bit later. I always give people 3 sessions, and if by the third session it's not working, then I either try to refer them to a different coach, or I call it out and we have an open discussion about how I'm sensing that this is not fitting. That happens more often than not. But usually if I call it out, then we can have a dialogue about it, and then we can try to improve the coaching relationship that we already started to build. So, and save them from trying to start all over with a new coach.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for showing up and participating. Thank you, LaTonya, for that wonderful power pose. Yeah.
Everybody pat yourselves on the back for being here today and doing this work. It's very hard work to do, and I understand it's extremely hard work. So be forgiving and gentle through this process. No judgment here. If you want to reach out, ask me any questions, please do.
Yeah, thank you for creating the space for us to have that reflection. We really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for being with us. You've earned 1 continuing education credit that Meredith will send you in an email. There's also in the chat room a link to a short survey that helps us to learn more and do better as we move forward with our continuing VMRCC coaching series. Next month, we have Marilyn O'Hearn on November 4th, and her topic is avoiding cultural oops. And then in December, we have Jennifer Britton on December 7th with tips on coaching remotely. And one last thank you to our sponsors. Thank you so much. University of Wisconsin Coaching Program, Choice Magazine, Milwaukee Video, and Stewart Leadership. And most of all for today, a big thank you for you, LaTonya. Thank you so much for helping us make our kickoff of the series a wonderful and memorable event. And Meredith, thank you so much for running tech for us. We appreciate your good work as always. So that wraps it up for today. Hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day and
See you,
week.
everybody.
Bye-bye. Take care. See you next month.